BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Tuesday. Most of you know this show as Zodiac Monday, but we had Christmas and New Year's Day both falling on Mondays. That's why the last two times I've done the Zodiac Killer News Report, it has come out on a Tuesday, but next week I'm expecting the schedule will be back to normal, and once again I'll be able to tell you today is Monday, another Zodiac Monday, and that's ultimately how I'm going to start titling the episodes in the future. Everybody already knows this program is Zodiac Monday, so I will incorporate the titles of the episodes. And if you go down to the quick reference, you'll see that this is an interview episode. I will be playing the interview clip with AntiSquid42 in just a few minutes, but I wanted to also talk about how this episode is going to more or less serve as a prototype, going to try and blend commentary with the interview news segment, and then I'll be responding to some comments and messages that people have left at the end. This episode is meant to show you guys what Zodiac Monday will start to look like in the future, and please give all types of feedback that you want in the comment section down below. Over the last 7 days, we've seen an enormous amount of Zodiac Killer news. The biggest story is, of course, that the remains of Donna Lass have been identified. She disappeared on September 6th of 1970 in the Lake Tahoe region, and her remains were actually found in 1986 in Placer County, California. But it wasn't until 2023 that they were positively identified. I believe it was Stefan Nyberg who asked the question, why did it take so long to make the identification? I mean, 37 years, you would think that something would have happened faster than that, because her skeletal remains were found, and partial skeletal remains were found in 1986, and it took nearly 4 decades to get a positive match. And I'm going to try and answer that question as well as I can. Number one, she was found quite far away from where she disappeared, and one issue that has plagued the Donna Lass investigation relates to the jurisdictions. Donna Lass lived in South Lake Tahoe, California, and she worked in State Line, Nevada, and there was some types of bureaucratic issues with the investigation. Whose department is this? Which jurisdiction is going to be dealing with this? But I did pull it up on Google Maps. Donna Lass was found in a place called the Yuba Gap, and using an approximate location, it would have been 69 miles driving distance, and would take 1 hour and 22 minutes to drive from State Line, Nevada, where she was working, to the Yuba Gap. Now, that's not as the crow flies, that's going around the north side of Lake Tahoe. But this is also something that complicates the investigation, because you might be thinking, well, obviously, that's still not that far away. That's just across the California line. And yes, they should have made an identification more quickly than they did. I am stunned that it took 37 years. And I would like to give a shout out to Bruce Monson, who sent something to the email address, BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com, and he talks about the situation and then brings a little bit of clarity. He says, "Hi Ned, I enjoyed your show, but regarding the news of Donna Lass's remains having been found, I just wanted to share a few items that I found today regarding the evidence as it was discovered back in 1986. It appears that they have more than just the skull. I'm attaching the articles, but here's the gist. According to an article in the January 24th, 1986 Auburn Journal, there were numerous bones discovered near the Yuba Gap after an extensive search of the area. Initially, only the jawbone with teeth had been found by a Roseville man named Melvin Bennett and his sons while they were on a fishing trip. They were hiking into the Long Valley Reservoir, which is about a mile east of I-80, where they discovered the jaw in several inches of snow in mountainous terrain. A more extensive search of the area using dogs revealed additional bones, including a skull and portions of a skeleton that were scattered in the area by wildlife. I think this Long Valley Reservoir might be a typo, and they meant to say Lake Valley Reservoir. Interestingly, there was another human skull found in April of 1986 near Truckee. The skier who discovered the Truckee skull said he found it lying on the ground near a U.S. Forest Service road, which runs behind the North Star ski area and Mount Pluto. Further searching revealed a shredded t-shirt and bone fragments. So, I think that that provides a lot of information. But I do remember reading either on ZodiacCiphers.com or in one of these articles that had been shared by Bruce that they weren't even able to immediately tell if the skull was male or female. So that was another reason why it took so long to identify Donna Lass's remains, because they just had a fragments of the human skull for, as you heard, first the jawbone, then the rest of the skull, but they weren't able to tell that it belonged to a woman. You'd still think they must have had the ability to do something about that in the 37 years that have passed. And I'm gonna switch gears and look at something different. I have to give credit to Richard Grinnell of ZodiacCiphers.com, who recommended the movie Vanishing Point, which talks about, well, it's about a criminal who is on the run and more or less putting himself into certain situations. He is trying to escape the authorities in a white Dodge Challenger, and it relates to the phrasing of a letter that was written by the Zodiac Killer in 1971. Now, most people would think about 1971 and the Pleasanton letter, mailed March 13th of that year, and some people also call this the LA Times letter, and I would like to read the text of it that has been made available on ZodiacCiphers.com. This is the Zodiac speaking. Like I have always said, I am crack-proof. If the blue meanies are ever going to catch me, they had best get off their fat asses and do something, because the longer they fiddle and fart around, the more slaves I will collect for my afterlife. I do have to give them credit for stumbling across my Riverside activity, but they are only finding the easy ones. There are a hell of a lot more down there. The reason I'm writing to the Times is this: they don't bury me on the back pages like some others. Now, there are a lot of things in there that people would want to respond to. Does Riverside mean he's referring to the murder of Sherry Jo Bates? And, I mean, we've talked about that one a lot on the channel. So we'll get to the part about the movie Vanishing Point, and this is again from ZodiacCiphers.com. Vanishing Point, which previewed in January of 1971, had the usual trailers and was released to the general public on March 13th of 1971, the exact mailing date of the Los Angeles Times letter, presumably authored by the Zodiac Killer. Here is some of the wording from the trailer. They want to get him and put him away, but they'll have to catch him first. The author of the LA Times letter also stated, if the blue meanies are ever going to catch me, they better get off their fat asses and do something. The trailer of the film continued with a radio host from KOW reporting the chase. And there goes the Challenger, being chased by the blue meanies on wheels. So was Vanishing Point and the trailer an inspiration for the March 13th, 1971 LA letter? With its mailing date deliberately manufactured to marry up with the release date of the film, that's with a question mark, the Los Angeles letter arrived 6 months after the disappearance of Donna Lass, who vanished close to the end of her shift at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino on September 6 of 1970, never to be seen again. The final scene in Vanishing Point was filmed in Cisco, Utah, but in the film it was portrayed as Cisco, California. This is the location that the film's main character, Kowalski, met his end. And I have to be very honest with you guys. I'm from a different generation, and more or less this story, it's what I would associate with the music video from Audio Slave called Show Me How to Live. And there are two versions of Vanishing Point. It was remade in 1997 with Viggo Mortensen and Jason Priestley. And the 1997 one is available on YouTube for free, and that was a very entertaining movie. It was just like completely engaging. I was paying very close attention the whole time. Like, my eyes are just kind of like laser focused on the screen. I love movies like that. There is an abridged version of the 1971 film Vanishing Point, and I think that the Zodiac Killer might have been bothered by these types of criminal portrayals. Now, this relates back to a possible Zodiac communication called the Badlands card, which I was discussing about 2 weeks ago on the Zodiac Killer News Report. And I'm saying this because it's just so many of the same ideas about how there's this criminal that is more or less thought highly of by the audience. Like, the audience is supposed to like the criminal. He comes across as cool. He comes across as attractive. And even if you understand that he's breaking the law, you're seeing so many of the other characters in the movie appreciate the criminal in some way. And in the 1997 version of Vanishing Point, I think they really wanted to capitalize on that, because the reason why this guy's going on these wild car chases is because the Kowalski character, played by Viggo Mortensen, is trying to get to the hospital to see his wife. He's in the southern part of the United States. I believe that one started in New Mexico, and then he's trying to drive up to Idaho. And a lot of the places were changed between the 71 version and the 97 version, but they did keep the white Dodge Challenger. So I think that the Zodiac might have been somewhat lonely. I think he might have thought of himself as undesirable, and he's even thinking that he's a real serial killer. But when he sees all of these criminals that are portrayed on film, he's like, hey, they're getting like the royal treatment, and people just are calling me some type of sick, twisted freak, in other terms. But I really don't think the general public thought highly of the Zodiac. I don't think anyone. 99% of the conversations that I have about people with people are saying that the Zodiac was a loser. And I think that that would have been very difficult for him to digest. So, I mean, Richard could be spot on with this, talking about how there's similar language that was used in the trailer for Vanishing Point and the LA Times letter. And I'm going to get to the interview clip now, but first I would like to get to your shoutouts from BuyMeACoffee.com. BuyMeACoffee.com/BlackBoxOnlineRadio allows you to make a donation or contribution to help support the show, and anybody who makes a donation will get a shout out on Zodiac Monday, or in this case, Tuesday. Our first one comes to us from Quentin Broom, who says, really enjoyed Policeman Eddie interviews. Yes, Eddie McNamara was a guest on 2 episodes of Black Box Online Radio. He is a former member of law enforcement. And in the first interview, we were talking about some of the possible Zodiac Killer hoax letters. I repeat, possible. And in the one that came out last Friday, we were discussing the Lake Herman Road murders, the Zodiac Killer's first confirmed crimes. Our next shout out goes to Jeffrey D. Jones, and he says, love that you are open to various thoughts on the Zodiac murders, but please refrain from lunatics that push the reefer madness nonsense. Oh, that's talking about the drug-related angle at Lake Herman Road. And Jeff shared a lot of this in the comments section, and in Jeff's defense, he's looking at how sometimes people are taking a true crime story and then they just have to provide an explanation that's drug related. It's almost done so frequently that it's somewhat of a cop out, because I think Jeff posted something similar on the Charles Manson interview that I did with Brian Davis, talking about everybody just has to jump on to the theory that it's a drug deal gone wrong. That was the motive for the Tate LaBianca murders. But they could be jumping to conclusions. But what do you guys think? You can put your ideas in the comment section down below. And our next our next supporter is David Richter. And David donated on BuyMeACoffee.com, but did not leave a message. Thank you so much for your support, David. And our next one comes to us from Batman66. Batman bought you a coffee. And I never get tired of saying that. Batman66, thank you so much for your regular and consistent support. And Batman writes, thank you for keeping us all updated on Donna Lass. May she finally be at peace. I hope and pray that the heartless killer is still living, not happily, but is eventually exposed and captured. Absolutely, absolutely. I hope so too. And our final one comes to us from River Prawn Pottery. And thank you so much again for your regular and consistent support. Okay, now I'm going to be playing the interview clip that I did with Julia McGann, who is also known as AntiSquid42 on the forums. So we're going to be discussing the Eureka card and Chester Clark Klingle, and this is going to be done in 2 ways. I mean, number one, did Chester Clark Klingle fabricate the 1990 Eureka card that was mailed, in the one with the snowman and the Groucho Marx sunglasses? Oh, and the second question is, was he actually the Zodiac Killer? So, here's the interview, and let me know what you guys think of the new format of BBOR. And right now, I would like to welcome Julia McGann to the program, who's going to be talking to us all about Chester Clark Klingle, as well as responding to this recent news about the identification of Donna Lass's remains. Julia, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. So, would you like to give us an introduction to your Zodiac Killer research, how you became familiar with the case, and anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I became interested in the Zodiac Killer case back when I was probably 12 or 13, because it was just, I watched that movie. I think a lot of people got involved because of the David Fincher movie. And when I watched it, I thought it was very interesting. And the way that I was, and I still am, is when I watch a movie that's based on a true story, I like to go and see what kind of editorializing was done and what kind of misrepresentations, if there were any. And pretty soon I figured out that David Fincher was very careful when it came to the clothes that the victims were wearing and like the individual newspapers, but he was not very careful with heavily suggesting that certain rumors and false statements from Graysmith's book were true. And heavily implied that Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac killer through the movie. And so I started looking into it more, and I was, back then, I was very interested in the suspect named Rick Marshall or Joe Don Dickey. But over time, I started looking into just more generally who I thought the Zodiac would be. And then started looking into the Eureka card. And then I think it was 2021, when I was on the Zodiac Discord, Tom Voigt's Zodiac Killer Discord. And during just a general conversation, he just sort of dropped a bomb in the middle of conversation and said that the FBI had identified Chester Clark Klingel as the sender of the Eureka card. And I had to take a pause because I had never heard that before. I don't think that Tom had said that anywhere for however many years it had been. And he said that he was told that back then. And later on, he sort of changed his wording about it. It sounds like what he meant is that they came to the conclusion that Chester Clark Klingel was most likely the sender of the card. But I am convinced that Chester Clark Klingel did send the Eureka card. And to me, that leaves two possibilities, which is Chester Clark Klingel hoaxed the Eureka card for some unknown reason, or he was the Zodiac killer. And I'm not 100% convinced that the latter is true, but I do think that there is a real possibility and that people are very dismissive of it just because of the narrative built around Chester Clark Klingel over the years.
Okay, yes, so many things that we can discuss there. And we also have this recent news about the identification of Donna Lass's remains. And which subject would you like to talk about first? Would you like to talk about Donna Lass or Chester Klingel?
I'm going to briefly summarize my thoughts on the identification of the skull that was found in 1986 as having been the remains of Donna Lass. For a long time, I have been convinced that Donna Lass was not a Zodiac killer victim. I think the only thing tying Zodiac to the disappearance of Donna Lass is the Pines card and Harvey Hines. And I'm not going to get into everything about Harvey Hines, but I will say that the Pines card, I believe, is fake. Just based on the handwriting on the exterior of the envelope, it seems to me that whoever sent the Pines card was not familiar with the way that the Zodiac killer addressed envelopes. They addressed it "Attention Paul Averly equals Chronicle," and they pasted on 3 different newspaper names. Most of that card is pasted together, I think, in order to minimize the amount of handwriting that the hoaxer would have to do. And there's just very general things that are sort of suggesting that the sender of the card is both the Zodiac and the killer of Donna Lass. I think any doubt there was in my mind that Donna Lass was not a Zodiac victim was erased when the location of the skull was announced, because if it had been found at Incline Village, then that would be very interesting and the Pines card would come more into play. But the spot where Donna Lass's skull was found was actually off of Interstate 80 and Highway 20 over by Lake Spalding, which is much further out from Lake Tahoe than Incline Village. I think that probably the only information to be gained from where the skull was found is, first of all, that the Pines card is not accurately describing that crime. And second of all, that whoever killed Donna Lass likely lived on the California side of the Nevada-California border. I think you can also put to bed the theory that used to go around that a killer named Philip Craig Garrido, I don't know if that's how you say his name, but that he was the killer because he abducted a woman in Tahoe that was a nurse, and he took her to a property of his in Reno, Nevada. I think if it was Garrido, he would have taken Lass into Nevada and not further out into California. And that's about all I have to say about that.
Okay, though, so there are several questions that are going to arise. Now, firstly, you said that you don't think the Pines card is authentic because it doesn't seem to match the Zodiac killer's behavior when constructing and composing cards and communications in the past. But the Zodiac killer definitely changes the way that he composes cards. I mean, now some of these might even be unconfirmed in the minds of some, but we have the 1969 letters, and that where the Zodiac makes his debut. Then he starts mailing in pieces of Paul Stein's bloody shirt. Then he changes the way he makes ciphers. He makes smaller ciphers that are harder to crack. Then he starts mailing in greeting cards. We also have the Halloween card and the 13 hole punch card. Now, some people dispute their authenticity, but a lot of people think the Halloween card is authentic, but that would be an evolutionary step by the Zodiac killer. So to say that the Pines card is different for the reasons that you listed off, how does that eliminate the possibility that this is just one guy who decided to change the way that he made the cards in a little bit different fashion?
Well, I would just say I think that the most likely scenario is that the person that sent the Pines card pasted on all of these things because copying the Zodiac killer's handwriting was a chore for any longer than just writing Zodiac with the cross symbol that has the middle of it punched out and writing Paul Averly equals attention, Paul Averly equals Chronicle. And some people think that because it says Paul Averly, that must mean that it's actually from Zodiac. I would point out that several times that misspelling was printed in the paper just to emphasize that Zodiac was a bad speller. And so by March of 71, it would be very simple for a hoaxer to find out that the Zodiac had referred to Paul Avery as Paul Averly. And also, I think that the fact that it says attention, so in November of 1970, I think, is when Paul Avery wrote the article about the Riverside connection and to Sherry Jo Bates and about the confession letter in that case. So Sherry Jo Bates, the confession letter in that case was signed attention crime on the front in block letters. I don't know exactly. I haven't gone back to look for whether there was actually a printing of the front of that card or mentioning that it says attention. But I think it's a very realistic scenario to say that was printed in the paper. The Averly thing was printed in the paper. There was a recent article about Donna Lass's disappearance, and somebody took all these things and combined them together to send it out just to get some attention or to try to just to mess with people. But I think that Donna Lass's abduction deviates from the Zodiac killer's known crimes, although you can try to draw a line between the Kathleen Johns abduction, which I don't think was the Zodiac, and the abduction of Donna Lass. But I think if you stick to the facts of what we know about the Zodiac killer case, I wouldn't say it's impossible that the Pines card was Zodiac or that he killed Donna Lass. I just think it's not very likely, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That does make sense. But as far as the creation of the Pines card goes, Do you believe that that was specifically referring to Donna Lass? Her name isn't mentioned on there or anything, or it doesn't say anything like, I gave a ride to a nurse who was working at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino. I mean, it just pretty much points toward the Lake Tahoe region. Do you think it was specifically referring to Donna Lass, or is this just something investigators created in their own minds?
So, I do think that there is a possibility that it could be referring to something else, but I think the timing of the recent article that had been printed, at least I've heard multiple people say that a week before the card was sent, or just over a week before the card was sent, there was a article about Donna Lass's disappearance in the San Francisco papers. I don't have those newspaper articles ready or anything like that, but I think that it suggests that somebody who was a hoaxer was just not specifically, and this also kind of sounds like Zodiac, to be fair, but not specifically claiming Donna Lass just in case, like, a week later the killer was caught and now the card is all out there as this is a false claim.
Okay, understood. And you also have a lot of observations about the Zodiac Killer's Eureka card, as you talked about in your introduction. And firstly, would you like to provide a description for the audience about what the Eureka card looks like and some basic info about it? And we can guess where it's from, of course, but also the 2 copies of the Xeroxed images that were sent with it. Would you like to just provide the basic intro?
Yeah, so in December of 1990, and we don't know what day, because if you try to read the post stamp or the postmark, you can't tell what day in December it was sent. But in December of 1990, there was a postcard sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. The handwriting on the envelope looks very similar to Zodiac handwriting, so similar that people think that it's traced. But you can go and you can look back at as many Zodiac envelopes as you want, and it's never going to line up just enough to say that this is what the card that was traced, or this is the envelope that was traced from. On the interior of the card, on the exterior of the card rather, you have a snowman with the Groucho Marx glasses with the disguised sort of nose and mustache, and it says, "Can't guess who I am yet? Well, look inside and you'll find out. And if you open it, then on the inside it says, then I'm going to keep you guessing, ... Happy holidays anyway." And there's also a Xerox of what appears to be some sort of magnet on a key ring with 2 postal keys. And in my opinion, they are in the shape of a K, which of course I think stands for Klingle. Other people might think different things, but I think that it's arranged into a K. And that photocopy, at the time, I believe at the time you were not able to tell what numbers were on the keys because it was too low quality. In 2007, they had the ability to, using computer programs, digitally enhance the image to the point where they could tell what the numbers were precisely. And they were able to trace the keys on the key ring back to Chester Clark Klingle Jr. And, I should also mention there's nothing else written on the inside of the card, only the text that was already there in this Xerox. Nothing on the card or the envelope explicitly says that it's from Zodiac. There's no crosshair symbol in the return address. There's no, this is the Zodiac speaking, anything like that. The reasons that people believe that this is a Zodiac killer communication come from the reference to Groucho Marx, which leads back to their production of the Mikado, and also the structuring of the sort of joke on the card. This card was a Secret Santa card, so it's like basically kind of hearkening back to From Your Secret Pal. Oh, does it say that on the card? It
I
does,
think
right?
so.
Yeah. So it says both on the Eureka card and the Halloween card that was sent to Paul Avery, From Your Secret Pal. And So that's another connection. And also, I will point out it has the same sort of setup and punchline, or the same style of setup and punchline as the Halloween card, where the Halloween card says, "I feel it in my bones, you ache to know my name, and so I'll clue you in, ... But then why spoil our game?" And so then on the Eureka card, it's, "Can't guess who I am yet, look inside and you'll find out." And then on the inside, "I'm going to keep you guessing anyway." So it's basically like on the exterior of both cards, it says, "If you look inside this card, you'll find out who I am." And then you look inside and it's like, psych, basically. So
Okay,
it's basically
excuse me. Please continue. Please continue.
Oh, yeah. So basically it's the same style of humor, but both of them say secret pal. And there's the Groucho Marx connection, and then there's the handwriting on the envelope itself.
For a very long time, I thought that there was a high chance that the Eureka card was an authentic communication. But over the last 6 months to 1 year, I've taken a step back from that for some of the reasons that you pointed out. I mean, firstly, we have this story about Chester Klingle, and also I had to just accept that a lot of the information that could be contained in the Eureka card could have been learned about from countless sources, let alone the timing 1990. I mean, that would be 20 years after the Zodiac mailed the Halloween card in 1970. But right now, I would like to ask you a very direct question. Do you believe that Chester Clark Klingle 100% fabricated the Eureka card? Is he the only person in your mind that could have done that?
I would say I give it, now I don't claim to know who the Zodiac killer is. I don't claim that Chester Clark Klingle is 100% the Zodiac killer. I would put it at somewhere around, like, by default, you have to assume that a suspect is innocent. That's like kind of an American ideal. So I would say somewhere around 70% Chester Clark Klingle, for whatever reason, even just to get a kick out of it, he read like Robert Graysmith's book and he picked up some details from there and noticed that his own handwriting was similar to Zodiac and some of his life details matched up. And so as some sort of sick joke, sent the Eureka card just sort of vaguely suggesting Zodiac. And then I'd say somewhere around 25% is Chester Clark Klingle is the Zodiac killer and he sent this Eureka card. And then beyond that, it would be somebody other than Chester Klingle sent the Eureka card. And the smallest possibility being the Zodiac killer sent the Eureka card in order to frame Chester Klingle, which was a prevailing theory for a while.
Is that one that you think has a lot of credit or credence, or do you think that there's a high chance that the Zodiac tried to frame Chester Klingle? I know you said kind of put it low, but like I've never really entertained that possibility. But what do you think about it?
Now, I think if the Zodiac killer wanted to frame Chester Clark Klingle, he would have written Zodiac on it somewhere. I don't think it's impossible. I can't say definitively because I wasn't there, obviously. But I would say it's a very low chance that the Zodiac killer, in order to frame somebody, would send something this vague that would go under the radar and have the only connection to that person be this post office key.
Okay, and I am actually drawing a blank about one piece of information. Perhaps you can clue me in or fill me in. And that is that, have both of the keys in the Xerox been identified, or is it only one that has been linked back to Chester Klingle?
So I haven't got exact clarification on that from me asking. I've asked Tom Voigt about this. In the original forum posts, they said that one of the keys was identified as belonging to Chester Klingle, Chester Clark Klingle Jr., the suspect. And then another one was identified as belonging to Chester Clark Klingle III, his son, who was at this point already deceased.
Okay, though. So this brings up several questions relating to possible Zodiac involvement. And I mean, I think one point we do need to address is there anything that would rule Chester Clark Klingle out as a Zodiac killer suspect? Is there any way to say that, well, absolutely not this guy? I mean, alibis or biometric reasons?
So Back in 2007, when he was identified as the sender of the card, they went back and they found samples of his handwriting, which they had Department of Justice handwriting experts look at. And it was close enough to the Zodiac killer's handwriting that it warranted a search warrant for them to, not a search warrant, but a warrant for them to collect a surreptitious DNA sample from his garbage. So they went and they staked out his place, and when they saw him put away a cup, throw away a cup, then they took that cup, and assuming that he was the one who drank out of the cup, they took the DNA from that cup and they compared it to the DNA sample that was collected in the 2002 primetime ABC show. The same one that supposedly ruled out Arthur Lee Allen and a couple of other people. And it was not a match. So that at that point, they ceased their focus on Klingel. I would say I think that it's a pretty widespread belief at this point that DNA was, and I will also say I'm a forensics student, not to talk over myself, but I'll also say I'm a forensics student. I'm trained in lab procedures. What was described in Tom Voigt's news update on his website a while back about the people that worked on that show improperly collecting the DNA sample is actually a rather common mistake. I think it's very believable that that's what happened. Of course, Tom Voigt has his sources. I tend to err on the side of Tom Voigt's sources are accurate, for the most part. I think that Tom Voigt's source that was from this show, who said that the DNA that was collected from that stamp was collected improperly, specifically because they took the stamp and they swabbed the back of it, and allegedly they could not get any DNA sample from the back, so they took the entire stamp and they submerged the whole thing in this solution that gathers DNA. And they took the DNA that resulted from that and started trying to rule out suspects with it. I would say that's a very bad idea, because at that point, almost by definition, the DNA that you have is from the outside of the stamp, which is very easily contaminated. And you can go back and you can watch the videos of them in the lab. And of course, we know better now because we were all sort of forced to know better back in 2020. But you can see them have their face masks that they're wearing and their noses are exposed. For example, somebody could have even just, not just that this letter has been touched so many times. I'm sure there's lots of people who have handled it. You have all sorts of possibilities of touch DNA, any sort of contamination. Somebody coughs in the same place that the letter is. Somebody sneezes, God forbid. So I think that DNA, what they basically essentially did is they took DNA that might have been Klingel's and they compared it to DNA that most likely, in my opinion, was not Zodiac's. And when there was not a match, they ceased their investigation. And I word it that way instead of saying that he was ruled out, because the fact that the Department of Justice was in charge of the investigation of him, I think they were looking to prosecute Chester Clark Klingel Jr. back in 2007. Now, people think that Klingel would never be stupid enough if he was Zodiac to send a key that could be traced back to him. I would say back in 2007, it was a very real possibility in the investigators' minds that an older killer messed up and through not knowing about something exposed themselves, because just in 2005, the BTK killer had got caught because he sent a floppy disk that had all of his metadata on it. So I think that they were probably thinking this could be a similar error. They could catch the Zodiac back in 2007 the same way that they caught BTK in 2005. And so they were very excited about it. And then when the DNA didn't match, they probably thought, well, that's reasonable doubt, and we're not going to be able to convict him, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And thank you so much, Julia. And Please stay tuned for the next segment.
And I would like to thank AntiSquid42 for appearing as a guest on the program. And if there's anything that you guys want to challenge from that interview segment, you can post your ideas in the comment section down below. And I would also like to say that that is part 1 of our interview, and part 2 will be played next week on Zodiac Monday. And yes, I'm hoping that it will be coming out on Monday indeed, now that the holidays are simmering down. But I'm exploring some new possibilities with the channel, as you see, blending in my commentary as well as having guests on the program. And I really missed the old AMA episodes that I used to do, the Ask Me Anythings on Wednesdays. One thing that I would like to include with Zodiac Monday, is a mailbag segment that will most likely come at the end of the episode, where I will respond to questions and comments, not only from YouTube, but also from Facebook and the email address. Now, my email address is blackboxonlineradio@aol.com. It's posted in the description box of almost every episode. And I always tell people that they can contact me about anything, true crime cases, and sometimes people just have questions. And from time to time, there are a set of individuals, an unconnected set of individuals, that just want to ramble and talk in circles, and they never quite get to the point. And I think that I've been very generous in the past about giving my time for some discussions, or even allowing all of these different methods to get in touch with the show. But with some people, though, I am taking a step back because they're just not getting to the heart of the issue, and they're trying to talk about a Zodiac killer suspect, but they're just so unorganized that it's not improving the discussion. And one of these people would be someone named Ray Penrod. I talked about him on some of the previous Zodiac Mondays from 2023. And, he just said that he wanted somebody to notice his work, somebody to hear him out about his suspect, Richard Ralph Mangan. And I was like, after a while, I gave in. I was like, okay, you have an open invitation to talk to me. You can share anything you want. I was going to do a full episode on his Zodiac killer suspect, and very simply, he just didn't want to do it. He just continues to send rambling messages, even to the point where I had to block him on my Facebook account. And then, as some of you guys know, there's also a Facebook page for Black Box Online Radio, and he either made a new account or maybe that one is not connected in the same way, and he just started posting again on the timeline, just again rambling, asking a bunch of questions. Did I get the paperwork? If I've been reading up on his suspect? And I'm like, I don't even know where to begin with his suspect, because he hasn't laid out his theory. He hasn't just gone point by point and said, okay, this is why I think this guy's the Zodiac killer. An example of one of the posts, as I said, this is a mailbag, this is again from Ray Penrod. There is a large percentage of Ned DeHaan and Robert Graysmith being connected because of the 2 years of avoided me. That's what it says, 2 years of avoided me, after I gave him the real facts and the way he conducts himself for personal interest demonically instead of spiritual nature. Yes, well, Ray, that must be it. I'm working with Robert Graysmith, and we are just all trying to spread disinfo to create chaos and confusion. Am I just like Robert Graysmith's personal disinfo agent? Robert Graysmith has a net worth of over $5 million, and I do not. So, how do people come up with this stuff? No, I have never had any interactions with Robert Graysmith. Of course, I'd like to have him on the channel, and I would like to talk to him about his books. And he has written books on other true crime cases that I find to be fascinating. But I attempted to contact him once, and he didn't respond. I've never had any direct interactions, and I know you guys don't believe that my demonic nature has drawn me to Robert Graysmith, and I guess we slaughter lambs and bathe in their blood on Halloween night or something. I would definitely do that if the opportunity would present itself, but it hasn't. I don't know. How do people come up with these things? And the next one is an email that came from Moonlight. Moonlight has Jack Torrance as their suspect, and I did a recent episode where I was talking about the show Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac, which is hosted by Nanette Bartow, and she also believes that Jack Torrance was the Zodiac killer, and she even read off a message from Moonlight on her show once, or maybe not rating off the message. I think she just referred to it, but it's the same basic issue. And Moonlight said that they had listened to the episode on Jack Torrance and sent me 4 or 5 questions, like follow-ups or challenges or things that I was supposed to find, like pieces of information. And I'm like, I'm not going to go on some type of wild goose chase tracking down the answers to these 5 questions. If you have a Zodiac theory, please feel free to write it out and I can discuss it on the program. And then they just like went off the rails, sending like 4 different emails that are just large chunks of unorganized information. And it's just, again, turning into a rambling mess. And I'm like, I'm not going to pick all that apart and just try to separate the chicken shit from the chicken salad. That's your responsibility. And what I don't get is, though, do people not understand that if they just write out a very neat list of points about why they think that their suspect was the Zodiac, or with any true crime theory, that's actually going to help you because people will understand what they're saying. Do they realize this? Of course they do. Of course they do. I definitely believe that all of this is intentional. It's the concept of they just want to talk in circles. They just want to just ramble on, and they are playing the game of if they're talking in a confusing way, people can't challenge them. They know the truth, but they don't want to communicate the truth to anyone because then someone might expose them for being mistaken. So what they want to do is they just want to keep the game going as long as they can, and it's very saddening when you think about it. But here's the email from Moonlight. Control is an illusion, you infantile egomaniac. Continue to shred your guests that have come forth. People are asking me, should they come forth to present their suspect? My only response is, if you want to get shredded, go for it. Continue to shred one another's research to be top dog. Block me, censorship, control my ability to voice myself. You present what you call challenges, when it is actually you shredding others. If someone else presents a challenge to you, block, censorship, throw me in the pit of your Voight dogs. I don't have a dog in this fight. Ross from Planet X Filmworks has no facts. He is just another puppet seeking admiration of Tom Voight, a Q-tip head that you are having trying to mop up and bolster your egos. Fight your own battles you pick. I only presented information that is factual, documented, and a personal story. Dispute it all you want. You're a YouTuber, not a forensic examiner. I am not a fan, and I don't listen to your show for more than a few minutes. I am not a subscriber either. And one more time, those were the words of Moonlight. So another thing that I don't understand is, if you don't like my show and you don't like me as a presenter, why did you contact me? Like, what is the benefit of that? I mean, I don't know who you are. I don't even know this person's legal name or anything like that. They were listening to my channel and they saw that I did an episode on Jack Torrance and they responded to it, but if you don't like my show, why on earth did you feel the need to write or send me anything? And this happens all the time. Like, say, for example, somebody will request, an episode and they'll say, hey, I have this Zodiac theory. Would you like to do an episode on it? And sometimes they actually do present their information in an organized way. And I do, but I don't end up agreeing with their conclusions. I don't come to the same conclusions that they do. And I'll dispute certain things. It's like, no, I don't think that this is going down the right track or something. And then they're just like, well, what do you know? Your channel is small. You barely have any subscribers. I'm not impressed with you at all. And again, if you don't like my perspective on things, why on earth did you feel the need to contact me in the first place? And as far as shredding guests go, I think that I'm definitely an easygoing interviewer. And I say that because the absolute intention of my interviews is not to shred anyone. I do ask questions, though, mostly to get clarity on what the other person thinks, and if I want to dispute a fact or something, then I can do that. But in fact, this is mostly a platform where people have the opportunity to share what they think, and in an unsolved case, there are different possibilities. I mean, you were just listening to the interview with AntiSquid42 talking all about Chester Clark Klingel and his involvement in the Zodiac killer mystery. Maybe he was involved, maybe he wasn't, maybe he's the author of the Eureka card, maybe he's not. It's an unsolved case, and there are different mysteries that have been woven into the Zodiac Killer mystery. So when people are going to be guests on the program, I can't think of a single person that I have truly shredded that I've been interviewing, not only here on Black Box Online Radio, but also on the Zodiac Killer channel's Interview with the Experts series, which will be making a brief comeback soon. And I hope we do more over there, because hoping and just get more guests on the program, I'm always down to work with the Zodiac Killer channel. Let's just see what happens in 2024. And as far as Ross from Planet X Filmworks is just seeking the admiration of Tom Voigt, no, I really don't think that's true either. I think he is hosting his own YouTube channel, and he's having his own true crime discussions. And he's talking about not only true crime cases, but also movies, hence the name Planet X Filmworks. And he is just running his own channel in his way. Like, do people actually think that there are just types of meetings that people are having where somebody like Tom Voigt or Robert Graysmith is just giving out marching orders and they're telling people what to do, or something that everybody's just all in cahoots? Absolutely not. And as far as Black Box Online Radio goes, I mean, I guess I work for Robert Graysmith, so they say, not Tom Voigt, yeah, little Bobby and me. And do they think that that stuff's really happening? That, like, people are just saying, all right, now, you got to make an episode about this, you need to talk this way, you need to say this, you need to discredit this person, you need to insult this person? Absolutely not. Nobody has ever instructed me to, do anything really with the channel, because this is a one-man operation. Yeah, sometimes I've had, like, requests, as you guys know, recently Ray Grant asked me to block one of the users, and when I said no, he cut off contact with me, unfortunately. But look at that as an example. I said no, because at the end of the day, this is my channel, and Ross has his channel, and Tom Voigt has his Zodiac Killer official channel and his website, and there are different platforms that people use, and there are different resources that people share, and especially with something like Black Box Online Radio, commentary. People are sharing their interpretations of the evidence and responding to books and articles that have been written about not only the Zodiac Killer, but other true crime cases. So, the final line, though, of Moonlight's email is, Jack is the Zodiac, talking about Jack Torrance. And I really don't know why this suspect has caught on with so many people who seem completely deranged and out there. When I listened to Nanette Bartow's show, she seems rather level-headed. When she had Harriet Suchet on as a guest, I could tell that she is just a little bit, what's a good synonym for not having a strong grip on reality? Let's just say that. It didn't seem like she had a complete grip on reality, and tying the Zodiac Killer to the Black Dahlia case, to the abduction of Jimmy Hoffa and all of those things. And I just think that those types of true crime theories, firstly, are completely false, and secondarily, it just goes back into that whole thing about twisted and rambling sets of information that other people have to just pick apart and figure out what the person is saying. So this is not exactly how I expected the mailbag segment to go. I just thought that I would respond to these issues that people have presented me. And this is another thing that is a little bit weird. Part of me is still very curious about Ray Penrod's suspect, Richard Ralph Mengen. I think that it's just something where we want to understand what other people are sharing. We want to understand people, even if they're being difficult. And when someone has a Zodiac Killer suspect, I at least want to hear them out. And I think that's why I continue to make videos like this one and continue to keep doing Zodiac Monday, simply because not only do we just have the facts of the case and the case file documents, people are also interpreting those into their own true crime theories, and sometimes we just want to make sense of it. I don't think I'm going to be doing an episode on Richard Ralph Mengen in the future, because, I mean, I can't really do it without some type of communication from Ray Penrod. He doesn't seem to want to have any type of discussion, but oh yes, he loved to spam messages, filling up my inbox and now posting on the timeline. what is so difficult about just getting to the point? But that's how I'm going to conclude this episode. Thank you so much for listening to Black Box Online Radio, and I will be back on Monday for Zodiac Monday, and I'll be doing a live stream this Thursday, and a new interview might be coming out on Friday for one of the Zodiac interviews. There might be a delay with that one, though, so we're going to see. And I'll keep you guys posted on everything. So thank you so much for listening. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com. Yes, still available. And you could also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook's in the description box. And there is always BlackBoxNet88 over on Instagram. And I will see you over there. Goodbye.